Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kaustubha. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Yoga in Chatham, New York, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host Raghunath and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York, Kaustubha Das. Welcome to the show, and welcome to Walk on Wednesday. Walk on Wednesday is the day of the week where people that, regular listeners or people that we find very interesting and pick their brain a little, talk to them for about 5 or 10 minutes and hear about their journey, their story, what they're doing, how they're applying bhakti to life. Walk-ons are two of my favorite people. If you don't know them, you got to get to know these people. This is Radha and Damodar from, well, where are you from, actually? These guys, they're actually from the Philly. That's how I know them. That's how I fell in love with them. And they have a great yoga studio, Palo Santo Wellness. And now they've moved to Arizona. They still have Palo Santo. They have an incredible community there. But they have this incredible place in Tucson. Welcome to the show, you guys.
Thank you so much for having us. Good morning, Kaustubha. Good morning, Raghunath.
Good morning.
And you can see in the background, there's many, many jars, Radha. Wouldn't you tell us about those jars? What are you keeping in those?
Is it secret?
Yes, secret.
Secret herbal formulas? Eh? No, they're actually. We call her the. We call her the. Yeah, the name of their company is called Bhava Wellness, and she is the Bhava Wellness Witch. But she's a white witch, and she creates all these incredible formulations. She saved my life the other day with her. What was that? What was the tincture you gave me? What's the immunity tincture?
Fire cider and elderberry syrup.
Fire cider and she makes it all back there in her lab, and she has just great products for healing, health, wellness. I'm really. How did you get into this in the first place, Radha?
Well, I kind of grew up around it. My family has always, my grandmother, my mother, they have always had gardens, and I watched them cook with herbs and use medicinal herbs and, always go to more natural ways of healing as I grew up. And I don't know, I think that my path led me here somehow. I decided to go to school for herbalism first, for Western herbalism. And I practiced that for years. And then Ayurveda, of course, came into my life as my yoga path deepened. So I went to school for Ayurveda, and now I practice both. And I see clients every day and make wonderful potions.
And it's hard for them to wake up early and do this. I beg them, can you please wake up? Because it's, 3 a.m. there?
Yeah. Anything for you, Prabhu.
Thank you, guys. And they've been on the show since before it was the podcast. But when they moved, which was just last year, they still listen, but they're regular others. Does Ayurveda blend nicely with Western herbalism, or is it like two different paths?
It does blend really nicely. A lot of the times with Ayurveda, you don't actually learn how to use herbs for until you're about a few years into the practice. But I was very lucky that I had that background. So I felt that I was able to incorporate something that I already knew. And very often, Ayurvedic practitioners only use herbs from India, and they only use Ayurvedic herbs. But once again, I feel very lucky and very blessed that I can incorporate herbs from, our environment here locally. And then, of course, as I travel, I'm always trying to pick up information here and there and just,
Sure.
larger tool belt.
I wonder if do you think you're supposed to be using local herbs from your area as opposed, from the subcontinent of India and tropical weather and stuff like that? It's probably better for me to use upstate New York herbs.
Yes, because your immune system is already, incorporating them anyway. You're breathing them in every day. You're around them. It's like eating with the seasons, very similarly, but you're using the medicinal plants that are growing in your own environment. It's very helpful.
These are great tools, especially as we go into this crazy time right now, where I think like things like natural medicine, foraging. She's a forager as well. She's a food forager. These are like I think they're like the most important things kids can learn nowadays. How to eat what's growing. I mean, some of the healthiest things there are just like growing like weeds. We got to learn to eat our weeds. And and I will say, I was there this weekend. Incredible community you guys have created. It's unbelievable in such a short time. I think you guys are empowered. That's what I think is going on here.
We are empowered by meeting devotees such as yourself. That's all we have.
We have wonderful teachers.
So thank you. Thank you for being in our lives. Raghunath, thank you. Kaustubha.
You guys are too
well-
good.
We'd love to have you both down here at some point.
Yes,
Let's-
please.
We were
That's
thinking
okay,
about a Wisdom of the Sages retreat in Tucson.
Oh,
Think
love
about
that.
That'd be cool. They got a cool thing going out there. If you're living in that area, check them out, Bhava Wellness. And if you want, it's super duper important in what we're going through right now to have backup immune system herbs on deck in storage, stored in your basement. We should have these backup immunity things. And I think it's really important. I'm glad you sort of sat me down and talked to me and like got me focused on my immune system. Super important for everybody in this climate, as well as covering your entire body with antibacterial soap and masks and everything. We have to like really take care. There's a responsibility in taking care of our own health. And I really want to thank you. You really gave me some good education this week. If you're interested in any of these, what's that, Prabhu?
We're working on converting you into becoming a fan of sleep, but I don't think that's going to happen, Prabhu.
I'm an anti-sleeper. No sleep. Ever. But I will say, thanks for all the stuff you gave me. If you're interested in seeing their products, Bhava, BHAVA, BhavaWellness.com is their line, and you can follow them on Instagram too. And yeah, I'm excited, and I'm excited to store up on all your stuff. I'm glad I brought home a huge trunk of it for my family, for my family's immune system. I appreciate you guys, and thanks for waking up so early and being on the show and being such great devotees. I will say that you guys do so much in this community, and I think the real thing that you guys do is you live by example. I mean, the way you treat people on a regular basis, people feel warm, welcome, and loved. That changes the world. As things get crazy in America, people are just getting crazier and meaner. You guys are getting sweeter and sweeter. And it's such a beautiful example of just like people want to hate out there, I'm going to love. And you guys are like this incredible example of this is how we're changing the world. We're just going to be kind and respectful and treat people with dignity. I'm so impressed with you guys and how you live. Thank you so much for waking up early. you Californians.
Thank you, Raghunath. Thank you so much. And I just want to say thank you for, I think when we first met, we weren't even dented cans. We were just a bunch of dents. And you saw the best in them. And you really spoon-fed us Bhakti and always were patient with us. And so we're very, very thankful for you, because we would not be able to serve and in such a way without your presence in our lives. So thank you so much.
You guys are very kind. You see the good in everybody. Thanks for, and you have full license to go back to bed if you like right now.
We have one last thing. We've included a little wisdom of the sages, 20% off if you'd like to.
A coupon code.
Check out just wisdom of the sages, all together, one word, and you get 20% off anything you like on our website.
Okay, so again, it's bhavawellness.com, and then wisdom of the sages, one word, is the coupon code.
You make any chow and prash over there?
I can.
Oh, really? Oh, look into that. I'll become a customer.
Chow and prash. Fire cider.
Nature's
fire cider, man. I gave my son fire cider. He grew a mustache.
A few extra hairs on his chest, too.
Yes, he had none. Okay, thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kaustubha and Raghunath.
Thank you.
Let's dive into the sacred literature. Om Namo Bhagavan. No, you already did that. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tatojayam Mudiraye. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, one should offer obeisances to the Supreme Lord Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayeshva badreshu nityam bhagavat sevaya bhagavati uttama bhaktir bhavati naishtaki. By regular attendance in classes in the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart will become eradicated, and loving service to the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, will be established as an irrevocable fact. Om Jnana Tamarandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So, we are on Canto 2. What chapter are we on?
7.
Chapter 7. Text
46.
46. Alrighty. It's been a long weekend. Surrendered souls. Okay, so I'm reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Surrendered souls, even groups leading sinful lives, such as women. What? A laborer class. What? The mountains and the Siberians. What? Are they going after women and Siberians? This is how we're going to start our Wednesday morning? Or even the birds and beasts can also know about the science of Godhead and become liberated from the clutches of illusory energy by surrendering unto the pure devotees of the Lord and by following in their footsteps of devotional service. Kaustubha, what is going on in this verse? They're saying all women are sinful. Labor, people who do labor, like people working in the streets, fixing roads. What does that mean?
It's especially about the Siberians.
Mountaineers and Siberians.
The mountaineers. The mountaineers, we got to.
What does the Bhagavatam have issues with women and mountaineers? This is, I find this sexist against outdoorsmen.
We got a serious lag. At least I'm picking up a serious lag from others.
Am I lagging?
Yeah, we got to figure that one out. In any case, we got most of what you said. This is one of those verses. It's like, if we go back to, I forget when it was. I think it was like May or something like that when we had Rukmini Devi on the show.
Yeah,
and some of the points that she was making were that the whole, like, what comes across in the Bhagavatam is that the humble are elevated and that the proud are brought down, right? And it's the culmination of all the yoga teachings, wherein it gets down to the real essence. And the real essence is that every single soul, every living being has a divine connection, and that there's no material qualification or disqualification when it comes to that reconnection, which is the highest goal of all yoga and the highest goal of life. Yeah. But the Bhagavatam is the book that's meant to clarify that. That's meant to say, if you have some misconception, some kind, or even like say some kind of pride, perhaps, or some kind of misconception about who is and who is not qualified to reconnect with God, then you have a misconception. And so that's actually what this verse is saying. Although the language and the phrasing of it may trigger someone.
Right. You're saying it's liberal. It's very liberal.
It's extremely liberal. That's the whole
Extremely
point.
liberal, even though it's reading as very classist, sexist, against Siberians.
Yeah, anti-Siberian.
And
It's
are we supposed to just? Are we supposed to just? I mean, this is a 5,000-year-old book. Are we just supposed to say, like, you know, in every culture, there's these class systems, or there's people that are like the favored, the the not so favored, the outcasts, the priestly. So it's actually saying whatever society, this is how you're explaining it, whatever part of society you're out of it, wherever it's a favored position in society or some outcast, that's actually got nothing to do with it. And this is perhaps how they look. I'm just trying to figure out why are mountaineers and women sinful? That's what I don't get. I mean,
well,
maybe do I just not have a glimpse into what they were thinking, or is this just common people's thoughts?
I believe that what's happening here is that if someone were to read the Vedas, say, and they would get an impression that like the Brahmanas are like the very elevated class of spiritual practitioners.
Mm.
And they might also come to a misconception that even like that position is something obtained through birth. Right? Because, you know, it's not uncommon that you take on the traits of the family that you're born in. It's actually quite common. But it doesn't mean, but you don't necessarily. And so, you know, people may, if people fixated on the Vedic, the teachings of the four Vedas, they could come out of that. And certainly many people have come out of that with a conception of like a higher birth. And that's this higher birth qualifies me to attain moksha or liberation, you know, or reconnects me to God. You know, I'm special in God's eyes or something like that. What this verse is specifically doing is counteracting that. It's where Vyasadeva, the author himself, clarifies everything in the Bhagavatam and says, hey, if you have the idea that women are disqualified from understanding God, you're wrong. If you have the idea that the mountaineers are disqualified, and here, I think what it means by mountaineers is like there must have been classes of people that were living in the mountains that were a little removed from the rest of society that, you know, weren't trained in Vedic culture in the same way.
Yeah.
And you know, there's
the rock climbers are also very sinful people. The rock climbers,
they may or may not be, you know, at this point, but whether they are or not, they're not disqualified. So, you know, the word sabhara is used, and it's being translated in this verse as Siberian. But I think that verse is also translated sometimes as like hunters. And I think maybe Prabhupada did that here. So, yeah, people that are, you know, you read about the Sabharas, I know in the, it was in that book that my guru wrote, you know, about the story of Lord Jagannath. Did you ever read that? And there's a class, the Sabharas.
They're outside the
pig
Vedic
farmers and things like that.
They're outside the Vedic culture, but they live side by side.
Yeah, right. And so it's saying, you know, don't think that, or the laborer class, you know, people that haven't gone through the rituals and been trained in.
Well, it's not only that; it's the ones who like couldn't read or write, and they were like
illiterate. Yeah,
they couldn't let, and the priest had the access to the Vedas. So I get you. I get you where you're going here.
So that's really, and you know, so all of this, it brings me, when it comes to this kind of question, it kind of breaks my heart sometimes, because it's like, here's a verse that's saying exactly the message that needs to be heard. That, hey, there's no material disqualification based on sex or gender or birth in a particular family. I mean, this verse is going so far as to say even like species, the same like the birds and the beasts can know God, you know.
Right.
The verse is saying that, but because of the cultural, you know, the cultural influences,
Whatever was going on in that culture at that time, how they perceived, in the same way we do in America, we have a perception of who is more evolved, who is more connected, who is more spiritually connected, and it's saying actually it's got nothing to do with your external positions at all.
right.
It's
And
got to do with what you are internally. And again,
yes,
and again and again, the Bhagavatam. I can't speak for all the Vedic scriptures because there is an idea of a priest has access to certain things and in some rituals, and you have to be high born and or a second born Brahmana to do this ritual. But the Bhagavatam, which is giving the essence, is again and again you hear these stories about so-called low class, meaning they're born outside the Vedic culture. The story I liked is Jabbar, the famous devotee of Ram, who didn't know anything about Vedic rituals, and she ate those berries and put them in Ram's mouth, and everyone was thinking, "Art, this is crazy. That's Lord Ram. You cannot eat those berries and then put it in Ram's mouth." But in fact, Ram accepted it with great love. Or the story of the Brahmanas doing the rituals and the puja. They're very clean. They're very meticulous. They knew all the Sanskrit mantras perfectly. And Balaram, when Krishna and Balaram were hungry, but their wives, who were simple homemakers, who didn't know the Vedas deeply, they were just when Krishna and Balaram came to them, they gave them with all love. And so again and again, you hear these stories about it's got nothing to do with your position. It's got to do with the heart of the being and the intention behind that heart. So that's actually one of my things I love about the Bhagavatam. But just the way this one was worded is very hard to digest,
well,
especially if you're a woman or a mountaineer.
so the point that I wanted to make was that if we go back, there's a very interesting verse and a very interesting commentary by Srila Prabhupada back in the first canto, 5th chapter, text 11, which speaks about the Srimad Bhagavatam itself, and which it's an interesting context in which it's speaking, but it's saying that this book is meant to create a revolution, like globally, right? And I'll read that verse, and I want to highlight something in the verse and in Srila Prabhupada's commentary. So this is the verse. And this, by the way, it's just because the verse starts with the phrase, on the other hand. So this is contrasting from the previous verse, which was mentioning that there's all kind of literature out there that really doesn't do us any good, right? There's a lot of junk food literature out there that we tend to be attracted to and we consume. And it describes that that's like a place of pilgrimage for the crows. It's like a dump, you know, basically. But on the other hand, that literature, which is full of the descriptions of the transcendental glories of the name, fame, forms, pastimes, etc., of the unlimited Supreme Lord, is a different creation, full of transcendental words, directed toward bringing about a revolution in the impious lives of the world's misdirected civilization. So it's saying that this Bhagavatam is meant to create a revolution, you know, because we are so misdirected. And you just have to look at our political situation to understand our ecological situation, or, you know, how misdirected we are. So then it says, such transcendental literatures, even though imperfectly composed, very interesting, right? Even though imperfectly composed, are heard and sung and accepted by purified men who are thoroughly honest. So it's saying that if we're thoroughly honest, we want to understand the message, even if there's some imperfection in the language and how it's composed, we can understand the message and embrace it and gain from it. And so that this is what Srila Prabhupada writes in the commentary. And this is so fascinating to me because I'm thinking this is a, you know, like a 60-something-year-old man sitting in Vrindavan, writing a book, person that was, again, trained and educated in the British schools of the early turn of the 20th century, writing books for people that we're now reading now, so much, 60 years after he wrote them, 70 years after he wrote them. And he writes this. He says, our presenting this matter of the Bhagavatam in adequate language, especially a foreign language, will certainly fail. He's saying, I'm trying to write a book to communicate to the people in a language that isn't my original language, my mother tongue. And for people of a different age, because he expected that these books would be read for thousands of years. So he said, our presenting this matter in adequate language, especially a foreign language, will certainly fail. And there will be so many literary discrepancies, despite our honest attempt to present it in a proper way. But we are sure that with all our faults in this connection, the seriousness of the subject matter will be taken into consideration. And the leaders of society will accept this due to its being an honest attempt to glorify the Almighty God. Then he gives an analogy. When there's a fire in a house, the inmates, and I think it's interesting that he uses the word inmates, right? Because even there's another example.
It's another they always say that, people, swamis that write book from India, it's not just Prabhupada, they call like devotees inmates. I wonder if it's a British thing.
It totally is. It's just an old archaic use of the word.
Right.
And so there's an example right there, even in the sentence where he's talking about the inmates of the house. When we say inmates, we think of a prisoner. He's not thinking of a prisoner when he says inmates, but he's using a word that he was given, as a young man in a British school back in the 18 or early 1900s.
Okay.
And so he says, when there's a fire in the house, the inmates of the house go out to get help from the neighbors who may be foreigners, and yet without knowing the language, the victims of the fire express themselves, and the neighbors understand the need, even though not expressed in the same language. The same spirit of cooperation is needed to broadcast this transcendental message of the Srimad Bhagavatam throughout the polluted atmosphere of the world. Prabhupada's saying, if I'm using language that triggers you, please look beyond that triggering. Understand the seriousness of the need of this message. And in that spirit, he says, after all, it is a technical science of spiritual values. And thus we are concerned with the technique and not with the language. If the techniques of this great literature are understood by the people of the world, there will be success. So again, he's saying, I might use, it's not my mother tongue. And of course, he's, using language that sometimes is archaic. But he's saying, try to understand the spirit of the message that's being presented and understand the yogic techniques that are being presented. And if you can, despite my lack of language, embrace that, then there's going to be spiritual success. And so I take that commentary as like really important for helping us understand some of these
It's
social
also
issues that come up.
that I feel like you gave a lot of clarity on that, but it's also the second thing is not just the language, but it's the culture. It's like going into a culture like we don't get it come from our culture. It's a completely different culture, and which still exists, and it's a different time in history, which is really different. Time was different even in America in the 1920s, in the 1820s, in the right? We're talking about
Sure.
not hundreds of years ago, millennia ago. So yeah, that's one. I think when you really get into the essence of the message, then even though these things are sort of like when you hear these verses, which sometimes obviously can be unsavory to even hear, it's good to remind ourselves that we're dealing with a whole different time, a whole different language, a whole different culture, and to try to hear with what?
Well, he was using with the spirit, right?
With the spirit of devotion.
The spirit of cooperation needed to broadcast this transcendental message. Yeah. Try to understand the real message. And again, if we look at this verse, what it's saying is, if you think women are disqualified from understanding spirituality or understanding God, you're wrong. If you think mountaineers are, you're also wrong. If you think the Siberians are or the hunters are, you're wrong. There's no disqualification. That's the whole point to the verse. There's no material disqualification.
Right. Yeah. I mean, okay.
All right. Why don't we read the commentary?
Yeah, I want to. I forget for the last 3 days of forgetting, but I want to. On the side note, some anonymous other out there or Zoomer has donated. If you're wondering, hey man, I'm noticing today Raghunath is quite beautiful. It's not my own personal beauty, but they donated one of those donut-shaped fluorescent lights, those LED lights. That's why I'm appearing a little bit more glowing, vivacious, vibrant. So I want to put it out there to whoever sent that mystery light or to assist me with my aging face. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Just gonna.
It might actually make the aging more noticeable.
Yeah, like those reality mirrors. Ever go into someone's bathroom and they have those reality mirrors where you're like, my nose. I've got hundreds of dots in my nose.
What is it, like a
I like the
mirror?
old New York City mirrors that are so you can barely see yourself through them. I hate those reality mirrors.
I never heard of a reality mirror.
They're not called reality mirrors, but there's ones that get to blow your face up. You see, right? All your pores are disgusting. My disgusting pores. A ring light. That's what Jen Mills calls them. And maybe Jen Mills sent it.
That's what they're called, is a ring light.
They're called a ring light?
Yeah.
Are these, everybody knows about these things?
Yeah, it's called a ring. It's not called a donut-shaped light. It's called a ring light.
Okay, all right, okay. All right, thank you. All right, so anyway, thank you, whoever sent that. Okay, wasn't there a return address? Could we find out by just looking at the return address, Mara?
Yep.
Who was it?
It's anonymous.
What, it was it
I
said
can't hear Mara at all. What happened? We had it all set up.
She's too quiet.
They're anonymous. There was a return address. I'm not going to tell you.
Oh, you know who it is.
Yes.
Oh, Mara knows who it is. Huh. All right, okay. Yeah, I got donuts in my mind. That's the problem. Okay, let's continue on. Oh, you want to read that purport, Prabhu?
Yeah. Want me to read it or you want to read it?
Okay. Well, maybe you, because
You're
the
lagging a
rumor-
little bit.
I'm lagging, so
Yeah. It's not just a rumor.
I'm on
It's
the
a fact.
lag.
Sometimes there are inquiries as to how one can surrender unto the Supreme Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita 1866, the Lord asked Arjuna to surrender unto him. And therefore, persons unwilling to do so question where God is and to whom they should surrender. Right? Show me your God. The
Show me your
answer to
God.
such questions or inquiries is given herein very properly. The personality of God may not be present before one's eyes, but if one is sincere in wanting such guidance, the Lord will send a bona fide person who can guide one properly back home, back to Godhead. Interesting point, right? We get a lot of times we get the question, how do I find a guru and everything? But we can get into that and all. But the most important is the sincerity of one's really wanting to understanding how to connect with God. There's no need of material qualifications, birth, age, where you're from, whatever.
There's no material qualification. We're spirits in the material world. Sting?
Yeah, but
Sting?
is that what he says? There's no material qualification?
I think so.
I don't think so. I don't think. I could be wrong, but I don't
There's
think
no
so.
material qualification. I think that's what he says.
Someone Google that. Mara, could you get on that? I hope it is. Right?
Maybe you read Bhagavatam. If you really read Sting's lyrics, I think he had his hand in the Bhagavatam.
I think Bhagavad Gita. I think that verse had some that song likely had some Bhagavad Gita connection.
I thought there'd be thousands of comments, but no one's even mentioning the police song here.
Yeah. Okay.
No,
so he says
political solution.
There's no plan. Okay, there we go.
Thank you, Greg. That's pretty close, though.
Not really, but okay. You ready?
These are very Krishna conscious lyrics, Kaustubha. There's no political solution to our troubled evolution. Have no faith in constitution. There is no bloody revolution. We're spirits in the material world. Our so-called leaders speak with words they try to jail you. They subjugate the meek, but it's the rhetoric of failure. We are spirits in the material world. Living, where does the answer lie? Living from day to day. If it's something we can't buy, there must be another way.
Now, hold on. I was doing great until this. Where does the answer lie in living day to day?
Well, I guess meaning, I don't know. If it's something we can't buy, there must be. Where does the answer?
What's the next line?
Where do the answers lie? Living from day to day. If
Okay.
it's something we can't buy,
Something we can't buy.
there must be another way. I don't know. I think this is very, very.
I'm liking it in general. I'm liking it a lot.
I like Sting.
Okay. He's a
Wow.
yogi.
He's a yogi. He was a famous yogi. Imagine being as famous as Sting. Everybody loved him, and they still love him. And he's like a deep spiritualist. It's pretty impressive, actually.
Well, here we go. There is no need of material qualifications
Okay.
for making progress on the path of spiritual realization. This is a song right here. Sing it like the Sting song, like the Sting song, this police song.
Wouldn't it be great if the purports all rhymed?
Well, the verses actually do.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Okay. There is no need of material qualifications for making progress on the path of spiritual realization. In the material world, when one accepts some particular type of service, he is required to possess some particular type of qualification also, right? If you don't have the right degree.
Qualification!
All right, Robert. All right. If you want to get a job, generally you have to have a certain degree or something like that. Prabhupada's saying you don't need one when it comes to spiritual practice, right? In the material world, when one accepts some particular type of service, he's required to possess some particular type of qualification also. Without this, one is unfit for such service. But in the devotional service of the Lord, in bhakti, the only qualification required is surrender.
Surrender.
And we talked about surrender last week, right? Just that idea, like, you know what? I've had enough of my material plans to separate myself from God. It doesn't work. I surrender. Enough, right? So surrendering oneself is in one's own hand, right? In other words, I don't need anybody else to give me a qualification. I can surrender if I want to. That's the one thing that I can do no matter what circumstance I'm in. If one likes, they can surrender immediately without delay, and that begins their spiritual life, right? Or in other words, the loving representative of the Lord is more kind and more easy to approach. A sinful soul, right? We could say a dented can or whatever. And basically that's what this verse is saying. We may be dented cans, there's no material disqualification. A sinful soul cannot approach the Lord directly, but such a sinful man can easily approach a pure devotee of the Lord. And if one agrees to put themselves under the guidance of such a devotee of the Lord, they can also understand the signs of God and can also become like the transcendental pure devotee of the Lord and thus get their liberation back to God and back home for eternal happiness. So realization of the signs of God and relief from the unnecessary, useless struggle for existence are not at all difficult for the willing candidate, but they are very difficult for persons who are not surrendered souls, but only simple, profitless speculators. Okay. So he's saying, no matter how dented our can is, even we may be a Siberian mountaineer, a female Siberian mountaineer, doesn't matter.
Mountaineer. All right. All right. What verse was that? That was 49?
46.
That was 46. Okay. This is 47. What is realized as the absolute Brahman? So this is this concept of absolute Brahman, this is spoken about in all the Vedic texts. Basically, that God is everything. God is the universe. You are the universe, or you are God. The mountains are God. The trees are God. The ocean is God. It's something that we sort of like can instinctually sort of. I mean, people I think are a little bit more connected to the earth. They'll say things like that. The ocean is my God. I surf, or the earth is my God. I love nature. This is something this is spoken about in the Vedas in many Vedic texts. When we're hearing about this bhakti and Krishna bhakti, this is very sort of confidential information. I was sharing this yesterday, Kaustubha, on Wisdom of the Sage. I mean, on Sweet Baby Krishna, and we were talking about these people who perform incredible austerities. They get some realization. They want to understand their higher power. They heard about mystics and yogis. They follow these paths of renunciation. They do these things where what am I and what I am not? What am I and what I am not? Am I this flesh? No, I'm not. Am I this hair? No, I'm not, because I can cut my hair. Am I this arm? No, I can cut off my arm. And they do this, drill themselves with these incredible meditation practices. And they get to these points of they feel this incredible spiritual bliss. But even we were quoting the Brahma Samhita, it's saying even after lifetimes and lifetimes of these austerities, they just get to the tips of the toes of Govinda. Like, what qualifies us to know about Govinda? Like this form beyond this informal. And the answer is there's no material qualification whatsoever. It's from the mercy of someone who's connected with that form. And I use this analogy. Tell me if you like it. And if you like it, you can keep it. And if you don't like it, I'll stop using it. But here was my analogy.
All right.
Suppose
a lot of responsibility you just placed on me, but let's go.
So, suppose you're at the Empire State Building and you want to go to the observatory deck. There's a long line to get up to that elevator, okay? Yeah. Long line takes a long time. I'm sitting at the back of the line. Okay. Then Mrs. Empire State Building herself, the owner of the Empire State Building, sees me, grabs me by the wrist and says, "Come here. I'm going to take you to the express elevator." And I zoom right up, and I'm right on the observation deck, and I can see everything in this observation deck now. Why? Why did I get to do that? No, there was no reason. I came late. I was at the end of the line. It was by the mercy of this person who grabbed me by the hand and took me in that express elevator up. So in the same way, we're not very qualified. We're not even great yogis who've done this, maybe stuff that for lifetimes. But by the mercy of a person that's connected, they reached out, extended their hand, and are grabbing us by the wrist and pulling us towards this very deep revelation. And now we can understand both. We can understand that external, that impersonal Brahman realization of absolute truth, and we get some glimpse into form. And they give us meditational practices on that form. And that form becomes all attractive in a healthy obsession that makes even the greatest, funnest, coolest, adventurous things of this material world sort of pale. What do you think of that analogy?
Well, I think it's very helpful. There's just, I think it needs to go a little bit deeper, and this is why.
Okay, tell me.
Because if you just went with that analogy, it sounds like it's totally random that you got picked out, and whether I make, any kind of spiritual advancement in life is just a question of luck.
Well, no. It's by the mercy of the owner of the Empire State Building.
I know, but they picked you. That owner could have picked anyone and just by chance picked you, and you got lucky. Yeah,
it's random. Why do I get bhakti?
Prabhupada spoke about that in the commentary we just read. He said when someone sincerely wants to surrender, then it happens. Right?
That's got to be mixed. There has to be some of that. But sincerity is sort of like a gradation. It's not like an on-off switch, right?
Yeah.
So we have to have a little sincerity, and then we get put through various tests, etc.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is it's not like some big unfair system out there where just like any person one person just gets lucky. When within our own heart, we decide, this is what I want with my life. Then
Sure. Yeah, because there's a lot of people who meet great souls that never, you could read the Bhagavad Gita to 100 people, and
Sure.
one person could say, this is great, and the other people could say, okay, next book, next, what's next? The Hunger Games. There has to be a reciprocation on both sides, teacher and student. But I'm just sharing by the mercy. We get our stuff by the mercy. Come
Sure.
on. Give me something for that one, by the mercy.
No, I said it was very helpful.
Okay. Where he's at. Oh,
Why don't we read the commentary to this?
No, I didn't even read the verse yet.
Oh, okay.
Oh, here comes the train. Can you hear that?
It's no problem. It sounds
Okay.
nice.
What is realized as the absolute Brahman is full of unlimited bliss without grief. That is certainly the ultimate phase of the supreme enjoyer, the personality of Godhead. He is eternally void of all disturbances and is fearless. He is the complete consciousness as opposed to matter. Uncontaminated and without distinctions, he is the principal, primeval cause of all causes and effects, in whom there is no sacrifice for fruitive activities, and in whom the illusory energy does not stand. Want to commentary on that?
Okay, well, let's go back a little bit and where this a lot of this started, and even going way back, right? Because we need to. We were away for a while, for a few days there. We need to have a little contextual, regroup. Is that this verse, this chapter, is Lord Brahma explained to his son Narada. It began by him explaining that he's not God. And then he began to say, actually, Vishnu's God. And he comes in so many different incarnations, so many different avatars. And then in text 41, he said, neither I nor all the sages born before you know fully the omnipotent personality of Godhead. So how can others who were born after us know him? So it's saying, he's unlimited and impossible to know. But then he says, but anyone who's specifically favored by the Supreme Lord, just like in your analogy, someone might be particularly favored, right? But as I'm saying, but then it says, but due to unalloyed surrender unto the service of Lord, they can overcome the insurmountable ocean of illusion and can understand the Lord. All right. So it's saying it's possible that one could be given that grace to understand. And then in texts 43 through 45, Narada gives a list of people that understood him, right? And he begins with with himself and his son Narada. And he says, similarly, there's Lord Shiva, there's Prahlad, there's Swayam Manu and his wife Satarupa, and there's his sons and his daughters. And then, you get the whole Bhagavatam family tree coming down of great souls who had a deep understanding of God, of Lord Vishnu, of Krishna. And then today's verse where it says, if you're surrendered, it doesn't matter what your background is. You can understand. And so this verse is now talking about, well, what is that understanding then? How do I understand God? Explain that to me. Am I talking about an impersonal energy? Am I talking about a person? Help me understand that. And so he says this, what is realized as the absolute Brahman, that spiritual energy that is all pervasive, so he says, what is realized as the absolute Brahman is full of unlimited bliss without grief. Okay. That is certainly the ultimate phase of the supreme enjoyer, the personality of Godhead. So he's saying the ultimate phase of this, there are different levels of understanding that's supreme, but the ultimate phase is this supreme enjoyer, or this person, the personality of Godhead. And then he goes on to say, he is eternally void of all disturbances and is fearless. He is complete consciousness as opposed to matter, uncontaminated and without distinctions. Usually when we talk about a person, they have all these issues. He doesn't have any of these issues, right? He is the principal primeval cause of all causes. and of all causes and effects, in whom there is no sacrifice for fruit activities, and in whom the illusory energy does not stand. So it's saying, if you want to understand the Supreme, understand that Supreme as a person, but a person without all the material defects that the people that we generally know have.
Right.
And that this person, this form of a person, is the cause of all causes and is beyond illusion, beyond the illusory energy. Okay, so that's how Brahma and Narada and Prahlad and Shiva and Swayambhuva Manu and his wife Satarupa and their sons and daughters understood. You know, that's what's being said here. And then we can read the text, the commentary to this verse. It's a nice commentary to it. Oh, maybe we don't really have time. Should we try to read a little?
3 minutes.
3 minutes. No, let's read a little. Let's get started on it. Yeah? Maybe pick it up tomorrow if we want.
Okay.
The supreme enjoyer, the personality guided, is the supreme Brahman or the summum bonum.
Summum bonum.
Bonum.
That's Latin, right? Summon.
Sounds Latin to me.
Sounds pretty Latin. I don't think they'd throw Italian in there. It must be Latin.
Do you know what summum bonum means, Raghunath?
I think it means the essence, but I don't know the actual. Mara, do you know?
No, but I'll look it up.
Let's look at summum bonum. I think it means like the final highest level of all good, like the highest good.
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
Highest good.
Yeah, the highest good. So when Prabhupada's speaking here, summum bonum, I think particularly in this context, he's speaking, there's Brahman, there's Paramatma, and then there's the summum bonum, the very highest level of all good. And that is the form of Krishna, Sri Krishna, the Bhagavan, the person. So he says, the supreme enjoyer, the personality of Godhead, is the supreme Brahman or the summum bonum because of his being the supreme cause of all causes. The conception of the impersonal Brahman, in other words, there's an impersonal divine energy. So the conception of the impersonal Brahman realization is the first step, due to his distinction from the illusory conception of material existence. In other words, there is an energy that's free of all material issues, and that's the first step in spiritual understanding. In other words, impersonal Brahman, this divine light, is a feature of the absolute distinct from the material variegatedness. It's different from the material energy, it's spiritual. Just as light is a conception distinct from its counterpart, darkness. But the light has its variegatedness, which is seen by those who further advance in light. And thus the ultimate realization of Brahman is the source of Brahman light, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the summum bonum, or the ultimate source of everything. I think that's a really interesting idea, is that like, if you look at light, it appears to just be, just devoid of any separate qualities. But people that really understand light, they can, with a prism, you can separate and see that there's a whole variety of colors within light. All right. Like, even, have you ever done that with a spin wheel with different colors on it, Raghu, and then spun it and it turns white?
Every day I do that. Every day.
So,
try to create light, photons,
yeah,
various
kaleidoscopes and
ham
radios and all your
prisms, disco balls. Sometimes I throw those in the mix. I'm doing light experiments all day long, practically.
Okay, so light appears like it has no variety, but if you go deeper into it, you can see there's variety within it. And so Prabhupada's saying here is that people conceive of spirituality as a divine light, but if you go deeper and deeper, you find that actually there's variety within that spiritual energy. And the ultimate source of it all, if you go back, is who? Sweet
Krishna.
Chubby. 8 pounds, 6 ounce, little baby Krishna.
Very, very charming too. Woo! Thanks to our Walk on Wednesday guests today, Radha and Damodar from BhavaWellness.com. Isn't that funny? Now you just say BhavaWellness.com. From BhavaWellness.com, get your tinctures and your herbal immunity boosters and I got these special tinctures to build muscle. because I'm just kidding. I didn't. But I tried this hair gain. If I come back tomorrow with a huge head of hair, you know they're working. Rub it in my follicles. I don't even want hair. You know what I want? I want hair just so I can have a big Sika. I want a big, fat, giant ponytail on the back of my head. It's just not going to grow. I'm so envious of my son. I was like, you can do it. Just cut it off. You'll have a big one. All I'll get is one of those little tiny ones in the back. I'd have it. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. It's practically speaking Monday because we didn't have class on Monday and Tuesday today. And tomorrow is Trivia Thursday. We're excited. Get your trivia shoes on.
Are you taking another day off this weekend or in travel or something like that? What's going on?
Sunday. I can't be here Sunday.
Sunday. Okay, so no interview this week.
No, but Friday and Saturday. And then Kaylee Lolita from 108 is going to be next Sunday.
Not this Sunday, but the following.
Not this Sunday, but next Sunday.
Kate 108.
Kate 108. Our player for 108. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. And, yeah. Now is the time that some people like. And some people think, this is, okay, it's over. I got to go. Got a life. But some people, about 62 people stay on. And they just... Some are actually dancing, and some are sort of observing. They take their pictures off in fear that Mara's going to zoom the dance camera on them. So they just put their name up there. But some people really get into it.